A long battle in court is now settled, and therefore we will address it ourselves right here at Hawkeyes Live, right here at the voice of college football. So welcome to all Hawkeye and college football fans. Please leave your comments and questions there in the chat. We will get to them during the next 60 or so. We, of course, have Corey Barta from the Hawkeye of the Storm on board, who has pulled himself away from March Madness to talk a little football. And again, not necessarily football for the next 60, but legal matters involving the University of Iowa athletics department. Hey, Corey.
Hey, Mark. Fun times, perhaps signaling an end to the ongoing saga, the ongoing story of the 2020 off-field issues. I don't know if it's a definitive end, but, you know, every one of those players, the 12 players that were named on the settlement, they're collecting north of $184,000 apiece. That's decent amount of money. I know if I had $184,000, you know, if I pocketed $184, by the way, that's after attorney fees and all that.
Yeah.
So that's $184,000 profit, I guess you could say. I mean, my life would change based on that. Mark, would yours?
I don't know that what my life would change, but it would be a nice amount of money to invest in my life and invest in the future. Yes.
I think it's life-changing money, but
I'd be showing up tomorrow and doing exactly what I'm doing right now.
Well, good for you. You may never see me again.
$184,000. It's not a million.
No, it's not a million.
It's a significant amount of money. Absolutely, it is.
Yeah. But it's, you know, it is what it is. It's the legal process, and it's, you know, financial decisions. And I believe KIRK FERENTZ when he, you know, his statement that he submitted. I don't know that you could say he didn't know a settlement was coming. I mean, he made it out like I had no idea this was coming. I think most people, even people like fans who just follow the story, assumed, yeah, we're probably going to get a settlement here pretty soon. So I doubt this completely blindsided KIRK, but I have no doubt that he probably didn't want this, but he ultimately doesn't make that decision. As much as KIRK FERENTZ has power over that football program as it relates to big money decisions like this, there are other powers at play here. And obviously when the state auditor gets involved and gives his take on Gary Barta and the athletics department and the athletic director, it does turn some heads, and rightfully so. And this has nothing to do with politics. I want to make that clear. I don't even know what Rob Sand's political views are. I'll admit that right here, because I don't follow politics, don't have any interest, and will not have any interest. But the bottom line is he's the state of Iowa auditor, and he basically said we need to address Gary Barta. He needs to be fired. And he voted against the state paying basically half of that $4 million settlement. He ended up getting outnumbered, and the explanation by the two other members of that board that made that decision, the explanation was basically, hey, we got to do what's best financially, and we don't want to take a risk of this going to trial and us losing, and then all of a sudden we're, you know, having to pay double or more. Now, I still don't quite have a real explanation as to why the state had to pay this. I don't understand that aspect of it. Maybe somebody with legal knowledge can fill me in on this, Mark. But explain to me why the state, the taxpayers are responsible for paying $2 million to a scandal that involved the Iowa athletic department, which predicates itself on being self-sustaining. We're always hearing about how it's not taxpayer, you know, because that's what we always hear. People complain about KIRK. Well, the taxpayers are paying his salary and he's not. Well, they're not paying his salary, right? Because the department is self-funded. So why can't it self-fund this? And yeah, Rob Sand brought that up in his statement yesterday. There's a lot of money coming to the Big Ten, each of these schools, because of the new Big Ten TV deal. It's not like they couldn't afford it. They may not want to afford it. And frankly, it should make people upset regardless. Like, I don't know if you're upset at the players that sued. I know there's a lot of people who just believe that those players are flat out liars, Mark. They just believe that they're all liars. Kavonte Martin-Manley's a liar. Akram Wadley's a liar. Aaron Menz is a liar. They're all liars. You can have that opinion if you want. I'm not going to, rip on a kid's character because I don't know. They're not kids anymore, but I don't know if they're telling the truth or not. I do think that when we've talked about this ad nauseum, when you have a dozen or more athletes that all claim something, it would lend me to believe that there is probably some truth to what is being said, right? And so the bottom line is, you can be upset whether you're upset at the players for their accusations, you're upset at KIRK and Chris Doyle and Brian Ferentz and Seth Wallace and everybody that was involved in this, Gary Barta. You can be upset that with the fact that you have to pay it as a taxpayer. You can be upset as a season ticket holder or as a donor who is funding the athletic department. And now the athletic department is having to pay $2.175 million again, another lawsuit payout. That's instead of using it for things like facilities and whatnot, you're using it for lawsuits. I understand the angst and the frustration by people. And when it's middle of March and we haven't even started spring ball, this becomes the biggest story in Iowa football, and deservedly so.
And so when you go to a sans descending vote, if I'm not mistaken, you also alluded to the other lawsuits, and that seemed to be the main reason why he voted as such. It's because Gary Barta has been overseeing an athletic department and has been involved and cited in all these other lawsuits. I believe there are 3 total involving $7 million.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, again, just purely from a football financial perspective, it's ridiculous. I think we all know it's ridiculous. Like the Tracy Griesbaum, Jane Meyer situation, the swimming and diving situation, the Chris Doyle situation. Now this lawsuit. You have the Rabdo scandal involving the football program years ago. I mean, you go down the list. Rob Sand brought up the Peter Gray situation. It's amazing how much, and we talk about Kirk Ferentz and his, I don't want to say limitless power, but he's able to kind of just do what he does. And as long as they're achieving their baseline, which we've discussed from a football perspective, what that baseline is, none of everything else matters. Like you can hire your son and promote your son, and you can have this second worst offense in the country. None of that matters. And Gary Barta, it's like as long as the money's there and they're meeting their numbers, who cares about everything else? Now, there haven't been any like huge moral ethical scandals involving Gary Barta. That might be the only thing that would get the president, the Board of Regents, to get rid of Gary Barta or force him out. But this is the first time we've really seen pushback from well-known people. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to find out. I don't anticipate him going anywhere. I don't anticipate him retiring. I think you're going to have KIRK and Gary working side by side for several years to come would be my guess.
Like you, I refuse to make any type of judgment or have any opinion on what led us to this point, why the suit was filed, what happened. None of us were there. So I am not siding on either side. I just hope that there was some level of justice served here, because I would hope, and like you say, the more people involved in the suit, the more it's just common sense to believe that there was something to it, that there was validity there. And when we're talking about 12 players. So I just want justice, but we will never know what that justice should be. Now, in terms of KIRK's response, and he was disappointed. I don't have the statement in front of me, but he was disappointed by the outcome, which again is a little less than $4.2 million in the settlement. You take away attorneys' fees and so forth, and you've got, as Corey outlined, $184,000 going out to 12 players. Plus, there's $90,000 that is going to be paid toward some of their degrees in receiving their degrees. So a little bit more. If you total it all together, it's about close to $2.2 million paid out to the players. If you want to add in the $90,000, then you're in the $2.3 million range. But KIRK disappointed by the outcome. And I don't know if that's because he doesn't believe that he and his son in particular were fully exonerated. They were dismissed, and this is taken off their record, but whether he didn't believe that this was a full exoneration.
I think Kirk. I think it's fair to say Kirk Ferentz believes they are not at fault. That's, I mean, right? I mean, that's the very substance of this. And when you settle the in a situation like this, even though settling does not mean admitting fault, that is sort of the perception from some people that you're giving them money to shut them up so we don't have to deal with it anymore, which is kind of what's happening. But it's also you understand from a financial perspective liability and risk of moving forward with a civil trial that could cost the university and potentially the state millions and millions of dollars. I think Kirk felt like they had pretty good basis to move forward. I think that's probably where his frustration, if he's genuinely frustrated by it, the outcome, it's probably because he believes we were going to win this thing at trial. But the state, they don't want to go to trial. Mark, they never wanted to go to trial. We said that a year ago or 2 years ago. We said they didn't want to do this. I don't think any of us really thought it was ever going to go to trial. So it's not a surprise. The news kind of came out of nowhere, but not really. About a week ago, we got wind that Barta and Brian and Kirk had been dismissed from the case, but the language of the dismissal was such that it enabled them to be re-added at the case later. So we didn't know if it was the end of the case, if it meant there's a settlement coming. In the end, it was a settlement. So, all I can say is you're glad it's behind the university. I hope that no player, black or white, ever comes to Iowa and is mistreated based on their skin color, whether it happened before or not, Mark. I think you and I both agree on that we don't want to believe, even though we know there is racism in the world, neither of us want to believe that there was prejudice or there was discriminatory action towards any players at Iowa or anywhere. So I hope it doesn't happen moving forward. I do think Chris Doyle was treated as a scapegoat. We've talked about that ad nauseum, but it is what it is. I guess now, does this make Chris Doyle more hireable? I don't know, man. I think he's done to some extent, and maybe time solves things. But I mean, does the perception of Chris Doyle change based on the state settling based on him from a formality standpoint being taken away dismissed from the case, removed from the case, and then the state settling with the plaintiffs? I don't know that makes him any more hireable as a strength and conditioning coach.
So we've seen situations where coaches have transgressed in some way, whether it's as in a football capacity in their job related to getting an on-field advantage, or whether that's in their personal lives, but also connected to football. And the most recent that comes to mind is Hugh Freeze, who bounced back, even though, my goodness, in the process of the NCAA investigating his on-field transgressions, which meant cheating as a recruiting advantage, they then tapped into phone calls that were made that showed him transgressing against his wife and family. And so, he has quickly bounced back from that. I don't know how many seasons he missed, something in the 2 years, and then he goes back to Liberty, and now he's the head coach at Auburn. This, though, is calls into question, okay, if we're going to hire this person, he was accused by 12 individuals whom he will be then working with other student athletes down the road, of that race, of that ethnicity. So I think that's what makes it a more difficult decision, I would think, for universities to go forward and bring him on staff.
Well, so was Brian Ferentz, and he's still working as the OC at Iowa. And so, I mean, and again, what actually happened, what didn't happen. I think back to the story that Amari Spivey told me on my show a couple of years ago that and this is well documented by other people, that Darrell Johnson Koulianos was forced to run around the practice field with a garbage can on his head. If that happened, that's inappropriate. We've talked about that. Akram Wadley at one time accused Brian Ferentz of asking him if he was getting ready to rob a bank because he had I think it was a ski mask on. It's inappropriate. I'm not going to sit here and say, okay, this happened or this happened or this didn't happen. This didn't happen. I just, it's if Chris Doyle is responsible for some of the things he's accused of, it's awful. And, he got paid $1.1 million to walk, Mark. So let's not act like he's, that he just ended up homeless because of what happened at Iowa. I mean, he got paid. Listen, 184,008 life changing is 1.1 million, Mark.
If used correctly, absolutely.
Okay.
Even the 184, if used correctly.
Now, you may know this. Dylan Doyle, star linebacker for the Baylor Bears. Is he in a position to be drafted? I'm assuming he probably is.
I don't know.
That's be curious, but I think he and his family are probably doing okay financially, but I don't know. I don't know what will happen. I guess if you want to look at this from a football perspective, and I brought this up on my channel yesterday, if the Gary Barta stuff, if anything comes of that, and somehow Gary Barta walks away or loses his job because of this, and I don't anticipate that happening, but if that were to happen, for all you people who are tired of the Brian situation, that might be the first domino that would need to fall for a change to occur. Now, maybe it wouldn't, because the next AD that comes in here, hey, Kirk may have even more power over that AD. I mean, who knows? But it does feel like Gary Barta has enabled the situation with the Iowa coaching staff, or at least he certainly allowed it. And so if he were to move on for whatever reason, it might change things.
How long has Barta been there?
Boy, how long has Barta been here, man? I'd have to look at his track record, because obviously Bob Bowlesby hired Kirk. Barta hired Fran McCaffrey, and I believe Barta hired Todd Licklider. So when did Bowlesby move to the Big 12? You would know that. Am I correct in saying he jumped straight from Iowa to the Big 12? Jason says 17 years in our chat.
Okay.
Which is probably accurate. That sounds about right. Be about 2005 or so, 2006.
August of 2006.
Yeah. And he's basically said recently he has no intentions, no vision of retiring anytime soon, which is basically what Kirk has said as well. Just makes Iowa fans real happy. Who was it? Was it? I was listening to your show yesterday. Who was it that yesterday said that he is the worst AD in the country? Some non-Iowa person. It might have been your Michigan guy.
Was this when I was still on? Because I didn't have any media guests on my Big Ten show last night. So this could have been after I was done. I handed things off.
Yeah, I watched you when you handed things off to your Michigan guy, and I think he had, who did he have on? Somebody jumped on with him, and he said, yeah, Gary Barta is the worst AD in the country. So you didn't talk about Iowa yesterday on the Big Ten show after that news broke?
I did not. I did not touch this story at all. I did not. Okay. We talked football.
Well, good for you. We don't do that here in Iowa.
I don't even know if I was aware of the story breaking at the point that I went to air. I don't remember.
Was it a national? I mean, like, was it on the homepage of ESPN? I mean, how big was the story? Did it?
No, it was not on the college football homepage of ESPN. Let me double check. I don't believe so.
Why wouldn't it be?
What? Hang on. Well, oh yeah, it is. It's okay. Second in line. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big story. It's a national story, and when it broke, the initial story broke 2.5 years ago. It was a massive story. So again, perhaps this is the last big storyline, and I did find it somewhat amusing. I'm not going to attack Akram Wadley or Cavante Martin Manley, because again, I don't know exactly what happened behind closed doors. I do think it's a bad look when you've been silent for all this time because you've got a pending civil lawsuit going, and as soon as you've signed the papers and the news breaks that you were awarded 184,000 apiece, you go on Twitter and get it and get into a back and forth with people. He did that a couple times yesterday, not like these long conversations, but just why? Why are you engaging people? There's already people, we've talked about this. There's already people that have accused Akram Wadley of collecting money and then never sending them the autographed footballs that they were promised. This was years ago. And, he's engaging people on why? Just take your money and go do whatever you're going to go blow the money if you want to blow it, or do whatever you want to do. Go try to play in the MFL or whatever the worst football league in the state of Louisiana is, and just leave everybody else alone. That's what would be my advice to the players that got the money. Just don't engage people on Twitter. It's not going to do anybody any good, but they're adults.
I don't recall Gary Barta's statement. Do you, like Rick, have the same response to Gary Barta's statement, who thought it was an arrogant
well, the statement that I read was courtesy of Chad Leistiko, the Des Moines Register. This is what I got from. I don't know that Gary Barta released it. I didn't get an email. It was not on a press release from the university that I saw. But I think the Des Moines Register got comment from him, and this is what he said. The athletic department remains committed to providing an inclusive and welcoming environment for every student athlete and staff member involved in our program. The Hawkeyes' overarching goal is to win every time we compete, graduate every student athlete that comes to Iowa, and to do it right remains our focus. Come on. I look, it all's good, whatever. But whatever. Did he write that in his sleep? It's the most generic statement you could ever envision. But I think that's what Rick is talking about. I could see why someone may look at that and say, what an arrogant thing to say. But I'm sure Barta's like the Ferentz's. He believes that the athletic department shouldn't have had to pay anything, and they're not at fault in any way. And that's their prerogative.
Yes, he is telling us between the lines that we didn't do anything wrong. We're going to continue to conduct our business as we did before because we didn't do anything wrong then. Therefore, we're going to not change anything, and we're going to continue to mind our business and conduct it as such.
That's the only thing about this, Mark, that I do have a slight problem internally coming to terms with. And that is when I read KIRK's statement and even Gary Barta's statement, but you read KIRK's statement, didn't you?
Yes.
I'll give you a couple excerpts from this. Let's see. He's grateful of the support that coaches and different parties have given them. They had full belief that the case would have been dismissed. Let's see here. For more than 2 years, our program has been unfairly and negatively impacted by these allegations. Members of the staff and their character and reputation tarnished by former members of our team who said things, then recanted many statements when questioned under oath. That's true, I'm sure. It sounds like there was maybe some change in stories which probably hurt their case against Iowa. But I don't know. Like, you read that and it just does it almost sound like KIRK is denying that anything happened? Like, we didn't do anything wrong. We know we didn't do anything wrong, and go back 2.5 years ago. KIRK didn't say he went for public, and he basically said, we're sorry for what we did. And if I had a blind spot, I apologize. And we're going to fire Chris Doyle because he did something wrong, right?
I took it more, and you would be much more capable of responding to that as you just did, because you're obviously on this program every day. But to my recollection, yes, he said all those things that you just mentioned, but it was more from the standpoint of not that I didn't do anything wrong and not that I did do anything wrong. He left it open to, if I have a blind spot and things occurred that I didn't recognize, that I wasn't aware of, then I'm sorry for that.
And fair enough. Fair enough. But they did bring in Maybe he would say it's because they had to. They started this committee of diversity and inclusion, and there were different measures that were taken. So maybe he would say those were forced measures, but the perception from the outside is that Kirk's making an effort to change things, which would indicate that he is accepting the fact that we need to make changes because obviously there's some problems. Now, I understand from a legal standpoint, he could have said we have some problems we need to fix, while at the same time vehemently, basically disagreeing with the substance of the civil lawsuit, right? I mean, you can have both can be true at the same time. I think that the civil lawsuit, involving those 12 players specifically, remember those 12 players, none of those players were successful in the NFL. Those players were not the players that prompted the 2020 backlash. That really started with James Daniels and some other more widely known, more successful players. And I don't think, my guess is a lot of those higher, well-known players that played for Iowa, like Daniels, would probably say they didn't agree with the fact that these players went after the university financially. So, maybe we shouldn't lump the two things together. Yes, there were players that accused Iowa of problems, but also didn't bother suing because perhaps that's not what their aim was. I don't think that's what Daniel's aim was when he brought this up in the first place. I think his aim was, hey, I think we got some problems here at the University of Iowa. It's my school. I love Iowa. I want things to change, and I think maybe they got some blind spots. And when you're a starter on the Bears offensive line, you finally have the leverage to be able to do that and not be canceled by your previous head coach. If that was what his fear was, I don't know.
I guess I think of it from this standpoint in putting myself in Kirk's place in not dealing with anything anywhere remotely close to this, but leading units, organizations, teams, that sort of thing, where you're hearing this accusation over here from this person, this accusation from that person, and some of them corroborate, others do not. And you don't know what's being said and done outside the walls of that office and what's going on elsewhere in the work environment. Therefore, okay, I'm open to correcting an issue if it exists, but I don't know that it exists. Therefore, we're going to take these measures to investigate that or to remedy it going forward and establish what the expectations are of everyone here. If for some reason somebody doesn't understand or somebody's rebelling against the expectations and the standards.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. And frankly, I'm tired of talking about it. We kind of had it. We put it on the shelf for quite a while. It was here and there. It would make headlines, and now that the taxpayers are footing the $2 million bill, whether you like it or not. That's just the reality of it. They're footing the $2 million bill, and then the $2.175 million other half of the bill is being footed by the people who support the athletic department. So it is what it is. Now, here's the other part of this. Fans and people who live in the state of Iowa should, especially fans of Iowa football, do they have a right to be frustrated with Gary Barta or upset at Gary Barta? I mean, when you look back and you think, man, how many millions of dollars have we had to fork over because you can't manage an athletic department? I mean, it is ridiculous. It's one thing after another. And I think that's, maybe that is what ends up costing Gary Barta his job, but I'll have to believe it. I'll have to see it to believe it.
Well, I don't follow the other sports, and Iowa football is, of course, successful to a degree. Therefore, I'm not in a position to evaluate Gary Barta. However, we talked to Steve Dace a few weeks ago, who obviously is not impressed by Gary Barta, believes that he shouldn't be the AD at Iowa, and others feel the same way. Now, our guy, John Diadamo, is letting us know that at the point that you peeked in at the show yesterday, that must have been Erica who was calling. Our friend Erica called the show, and this was not like a media person. This was Erica who may have called Barta the worst AD in the world or whatever was stated.
Yeah, Erica, I think, has made her feelings on Gary Barta quite clear over the course of months and even years. More power to her.
Now, once we're entering March Madness, and I don't have a whole lot of information on the national scene for either the men's game or the women's game, but I've got my connection with you, so I get little threads of what's going on concerning Iowa. So Iowa is, I believe I saw this on one of your tweets. They're going to be a 5 seed this week in the Big Ten tournament.
Correct.
The same seed that they were last year in winning the Big Ten championship.
Right.
The women are much better in regards to their national ranking, correct?
We just won the Big Ten tournament.
Just won the Big Ten tournament. Okay.
Blew out Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament championship by 33 or whatever it was, and they have a chance at a 1 seed, but likely a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Okay, so you've got a 1 or 2 seed on the women's side. You've got a, let's say they have a respectable Big Ten tournament. They go to the semifinals. They'll be a 5 seed.
7 seed in the NCAA.
7 seed. Okay.
Yeah.
Gary Barta obviously is responsible for the hiring of the coaches, meaning the coach, the head coach, and then depending on the AD in that particular situation and the tenure of the head coach may have some say into the hiring of assistant coaches, but certainly not at this point with KIRK. So the success and or failure of these programs, which we're looking at a very successful season for both the men's and the women's teams, obviously Barta at this point has nothing to do with that other than his role is to provide them with as much support as is needed to compete at the Big Ten level.
He's really supporting them, Mark. He did hire some good coaches. You got to give him credit. He hired Fran McCaffrey, who's been a good hire, although some people want him gone because he doesn't coach defense. He hired Rick Heller, who's been, by the way, the baseball team just cracked the top 25. And if I know baseball, you probably not the top of your college baseball's not the top of your radar, but to make the top 25 as a Big Ten team at Iowa is hard to do. Mm-hmm. It's just hard to do. They just broke the top 25, beat the number 1 team in the country a little over a week ago. So the baseball program is humming. You have track and field been very successful in recent years, winning championships. So, I mean, we talk about wrestling. I mean, they are cemented as the second best program in the country behind Penn State, and they're frustrated that they're not number 1. So, I mean, I understand that perspective of things. Softball is not in a great place. Volleyball has not been in a great place for a while now. But boy, if all you have to complain about is softball and volleyball, I think we're probably doing okay. It'll be interesting to see in the coming months what happens with Barta. But at the same time, we've said this before about Brian. We've said it before regarding a lot of different things. We've had these conversations about Barta in the past. Heck, every time we've had a lawsuit, every time we've had a PR disaster prompted by Gary Barta, we've asked this question: how does Iowa retain him? Why doesn't anybody do anything? Well, I don't expect Iowa to do anything this time either. And regardless of what you want, your say is very minute in the grand. I hate to say that, it's breaking news to people. Your opinion is very minute, and Gary Barta don't care, right? As long as the money's in there, he's just fine.
And you can look at it this way: he has ultimate oversight over a women's basketball program that is setting TV ratings records.
It's true. It's true. Did you see the release, the Big Ten Network information that they released? Was it this week?
I was having lunch with a friend when I saw you send that DM to me, and I mentioned it to him, and you would just be shaking your head in response to some of the things that he had to say.
Well, you got to admit, 600 some thousand viewers is quite a bit. I don't know what that
absolutely.
What does that compare with, like an average college basketball, men's college basketball game on ESPN? Do you have any idea?
I've been so separated from that I don't know for sure. I don't want to. I haven't seen those ratings for almost 3 years.
Well, Big Ten Network
3
tweeted
years.
out
Yeah.
earlier today. The Big Ten Network tweeted out that the Big Ten Network's coverage of women's basketball in the Big Ten Conference this year was the most watched women's basketball season in Big Ten Network history.
Yeah, I saw that.
So, regardless of how you feel about women's sports.
Oh, absolutely. It's phenomenal.
It's trending upward. The sport is trending upward as far as attention and eyes and whatnot. Not saying it's competing with men's college basketball or certainly college football, but and big part of that's Caitlin Clark. What she's done at Iowa and just the attention she's brought for the program and the conference. And I think NIL probably helps that. So, anyways.
Thanks to you, Corey, I know one women's college basketball player. Caitlin Clark. I know one.
Go into this, but how do you not know who Caitlin Clark is, even without me?
I found out who she was reading that tweet.
But so you'd never heard of her before? You'd never heard of Caitlin Clark?
If somebody said, who's Caitlin Clark 10 days ago, I would have said, I have no idea.
That's incredible to me.
Now, this conversation does remind me, not to make this about me, but I'm going to share a personal experience. Was that this is reminding me that it was 3 years ago. So this 2023, go back 3 years ago, obviously that was the onset of the pandemic and the canceling of all the conference tournaments, and when I found out about all that, I was standing in a control room at ESPN checking on staff and so forth as we were leaving Sports Center going into the noon tip-off of whatever the conference, I believe it was the ACC, on a Thursday, and we found out 10 or 15 minutes before we were supposed to go and transition to remote that the game had been canceled and most likely the tournament. And then obviously the games started just dropping but like flies, and the cancellations came fast and furious.
Wait a minute. You were working for ESPN in early 2020?
Yes.
Wow.
I was there until October of 20.
Man, I did not realize that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. We'll have to have a conversation about that later.
Oh, I've got a lot of stories.
Yeah, I remember sitting
Most of them good.
I remember sitting up waiting for Iowa to play on that Thursday. And I remember Fran McCaffrey going on Sports Center and talking about, maybe we could talk about March Madness in May and having it be May Madness. Because, we thought, okay, COVID's going to be under control by May and we're going to be back to normal. Looking back on those times, it is crazy what happened. But
yeah,
just be happy it's behind us, right? Just be happy that time period's behind us and we don't have a bunch of canceled sporting events because, boy, that stunk.
Yeah, it was something else, no doubt. Hawkeyes Live, folks, every Tuesday at 4:30 Central Time with Corey Brada from the Hawkeye at the Storm. We always appreciate, of course, Corey making this show work. He's got his own channel. It's from the Hawkeye at the Storm. So that's the deep dive on Iowa football, men's and women's basketball. Of course, it's March Madness. So get on over there, check out Corey's work. NFL Combine over the weekend, even though it was a huge, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, for the record, I am doing women's basketball post-game shows for March Madness. So I don't do that throughout the season, but did post-game shows after each Big Ten tournament game. We'll continue to do that. We'll see how far they advance in March. So lots of post-game coverage coming.
We started on my channel, on the main channel, a Big Ten live show. We debuted that last night, and then we did an SEC show. And of course, I scheduled those on Monday and Tuesday to avoid any basketball interference or any overlap.
Good for you, but
I'm kidding. I am totally kidding. Okay. I'm totally kidding. No, we do not take basketball into consideration when we schedule our.
You will have to I would guess in a month.
Yes.
Is it a month from yesterday? In a month, you better cancel you're going to cancel your Big Ten live show, right? You're not going to do a Big Ten live show during the national championship, correct? It's national championship's always on a Monday.
It sounds like I am.
You're going to do that on a Monday?
We'll compete right with CBS or whoever airs it now. Whoever.
More power to you, Mark. That's incredible. I'll be anxious to see.
I did not think of it. People are going to think that I hate college basketball when that's very much not the case. I just ignore it. But for years and years, loved it. I really did. All right, NFL Combine over the weekend. So if you were not watching basketball over the weekend, as I was not, I was watching some of the NFL Combine. I wasn't laser focused on it, but I had it on for periods of time. And so we had Riley Moss, we had Sam Laporta, we had Jack Campbell, and I'm missing someone.
Lucas Van Ness.
Lucas Van Ness, who was, for some people, a bit of a surprise entry into the NFL draft. So now we've got those four. And what are your thoughts about their performances over the weekend?
I wish I had all their numbers in front of me. I should have prepared better for that, but they all tested very well, Mark, in general, which Jack Campbell really tested well. I think better than a lot of people thought he would. I'm looking at Lucas Van Ness's RAS, relative athletic score. According to this metric, he tested out in the great range for his 40-yard dash at 4.58, 20 yards split at 2.68, 10-yard split 1.64. In the agility, for his agility grade, he hit a 4.32 with the shuttle and 7.02 with his 3-cone. Those are pretty good numbers. I'm no analyst as it relates to the combine, but those are good numbers. And he's got good size, obviously, at 6'5", 275. He is going to be one of those that we'll see what he does at the next level. But it sounds like he's got a chance, Mark, to be a first-round draft pick. And I just cannot fathom that. Like, part of me just cannot believe that he never started a game at Iowa. And I understand he was very kind. I listened to an interview this morning with him and Mike Florio. Is that the guy's name, Mike Florio of NBC?
Yes,
I believe. And he was very complimentary of Iowa and didn't seem to hold any grudge over having not started. But it was acknowledged the fact that he was, right at the top as far as number of snaps in a game. And he kind of attributed to, I had older guys in front of me that had, experience, etc. I just can't imagine having a guy who's potentially a first-round draft pick and him not starting. That's just incredible to me. And I will say this, I'm not going to go so far as to imply that he was underutilized, because if he's out there, he's out there. I mean, there's only so much you can do with a D end, right? Is that fair to say? I mean, it's not rocket science. There's only so much you can do to utilize his skill set.
Yeah. It's not a situation where, we had a first-round running back and he got 12 carries a game, or we had Charlie Jones and we threw him the ball 21 times in a season.
Right. Yeah. When you're not a skill position player,
it's still just,
I know. And by the way, he tested pretty well. Like, I don't have his. Do you have his final numbers?
I saw his 40 time. I thought it was
good,
exceptional.
But I think
I'll look it up.
He struggled in a couple of other areas, I think. But I don't know. I just look at, Van Ness had some moments this year where you watch him on tape and, he's just plowing through to, offensive linemen, moments where he was really impressive. But at the same time, I look back and I think, didn't feel like the season of a guy who is a first-round draft pick as an edge rusher. It just didn't to me. It didn't feel. Remember, we talked all season long, Mark, about they're really solid, but they don't really have that one animal. Well, his nickname is Hercules. He's about to be a first-round draft pick. Shouldn't he have been that one animal?
Yeah. I mean, so you can't imagine that he was double teamed or there was any rotations going his way, any offensive line rotations running his way, anything like that. It's not like he had a season like Will Anderson at Alabama racking up 31 tackles for loss. And then the next season, obviously there's so much attention there. And so for Lucas Van Ness, what were his stats here? He had a nice season. Yeah. Excuse me. 10.5 tackles for loss and 6 sacks. Charlie Jones, I should have blurted out his 40 time. I would have been right. Yeah, 4:43. I believe the top time was 4:33.
4:43 is that's pretty darn good.
Oh yeah, it
That is
is.
moving.
Yes.
That's really impressive for a former walk-on from Buffalo.
Like, we both knew he was underutilized. We talked about it constantly, but we
Yeah.
didn't foresee this. I should say I did not foresee this. Not that I was thinking about Charlie Jones every day and trying to project his NFL stardom, but nor did I foresee 100 and whatever he caught at Purdue, 110 passes. Just had a great season, and then yeah, he follows it up with 4.43. Yeah,
And how about Riley Moss with a 4.48? Pretty good. I think
Mhm.
he was shooting for the stars. He said prior to the combine that he thought he could be in the sub 4.4 range, which yeah, that's tough to do. But based on some of his numbers, he was, let's see, 39 on his vertical jump, 10.7 on the broad jump. I mean, he's again, I'm no analyst as it relates to the combine, but based on those numbers, it sounds like he's probably going to be drafted in the top 3 or 4 rounds, Mark. And I've said this a number of times. I've never thought he was a top 3 round draft pick. I thought if he went out last year after all those interceptions, I thought he'd get a late flyer, but I did not expect him to test as well at the combine as he has. And he played really well at the Senior Bowl. I think the Senior Bowl is going to help him get drafted higher. My guess is he gets drafted in the 3rd round, Mark, and more power to him, man. If he gets drafted in the 3rd round, Van Ness is likely a 1st round or 2nd. I mean, I would think he's a lock for at least early 2nd round. Man, Jack Campbell, I don't have his. Let me pull up his numbers. He was really good at the combine. We might have a situation, Mark, where 4 Iowa players go inside the top 3 rounds. I don't know about Laporta. That'll be interesting to see. I think Laporta and I haven't looked at. And by the way, I haven't looked at any mock drafts. But my guess is Moss and Laporta are probably fringe 3, 4, maybe 5 if they slip. I just don't. And again, Laporta tested out really well at the combine as well. I'm trying to find the numbers here for Lucas for Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell is the only linebacker since 2003 to measure over 6'4", jump more than 37 inches in the vertical, 10.8 in the broad jump, and run a sub 4.7 40. So his 40 time was, where's his 40 time? I don't know that 40 time really matter for a linebacker. I don't really know that it does.
Well, they got to run sideline to sideline. They're not running 40 yards. They're probably running 15 to 18 quite a bit.
Okay, well, how about this? How about this, Mark? Jack, according to Ben Stevens, who is works for Sports Grid on Twitter. This is what he tweeted. Jack Campbell, 20-yard shuttle, 4.24, which ranked 1st among all linebackers at the combine. His 3-cone time was a 6.74, also 1st among all linebackers at the combine. And his broad jump was a 10.8, which ranks 2nd among all linebackers at the combine. Telling you, I said this a long time ago. He's one guy, to me, low risk. Like if you just want a guy who you know is going to be productive, he's got I don't know what else do you want him to do? He's testing well at the what do you want him to do? I think maybe teams are a little bit apprehensive about his ability to cover guys in the league, but I think he's going to be just fine.
Exactly. So we just filled in or saw him fill in the boxes of all the athletic measurements. So you add the production in college on the field, tackling guys, obviously Butkus Award winner, so we don't have to speak anymore to his production. Technician, knows the game, fundamentals, all of those things. He was not just a whirling derby athlete, freakish athlete that won the Butkus Award. great technician, fundamental player. Off the field, from everything we know, just a phenomenal guy in regards to the work ethic he will put in and the focus on the game and doing all the right things and being a great teammate and leader. Then now checks the last box. That's a broad one, athleticism.
What I'm curious, what's a good 40 time for a tight end?
For a tight end, in the 4.7 range, 4.75.
This is an unofficial time. Trying to find his.
Now, I will qualify that because obviously in the modern game, we have these kind of quasi wide receivers playing tight end.
Right. That's true. But Laporta, unofficial time here that I'm seeing from the guy, and I did not follow the combine as closely as some people did, so maybe I'm not a great authority. His 40 time was a 4.59. Pretty darn good. 20-yard shuttle 4.25, 3-cone 6.91, broad jump 10.3, vertical jump 35, 10-yard split on the 40 was 1.59. So those sound like pretty good numbers to me. Again, not being a tactician or an analyst as it relates to these things. By the way, let me find the comment here from King Davis 7374. There's offensive linemen that run fast. Who are we talking about here? Who are we talking about? I think we're talking about Jack Campbell. I think we just said, didn't we just tell you what his numbers
run faster than Campbell or Laporta? That's a ridiculous statement concerning either one, but especially Campbell, of course. That's
Campbell's. I gave you his 20-yard shuttle time, his 3-cone time, and his broad jump. And those ranked first, and second among all linebackers tested at the combine.
Therefore, King Davis is telling us that offensive linemen run faster than all linebackers. Offensive linemen are just faster than linebackers because DeJuan Jones is going to be a first-round pick at Ohio State, and he was marveling people there at the draft, and he was still running. He's just a mountain of a man, and he's running like a 5.3. And they're saying, great job. That's phenomenal.
Well,
it's nowhere close.
I can tell you, let me find this. So yeah, in response, I don't know what to say in response to that comment.
While you're looking for that, not to make this a Michigan hour, but real quick, talking about freaks in the draft and just testing well, the best time came from a Big Ten player. So the top 3 corner times, SEC fans, came from Big Ten cornerbacks. And the number 1 time was from DJ Turner of Michigan, who ran a 4.26. And Amarian Walker, he's a current defensive back for Michigan. He apparently did the 3-cone drill. This is at Michigan. And his time, now it might have been a hand-timed deal, but would have been the NFL record at the combine. So just FYI.
So let me find the so this is I'm seeing this from some source here. This is Jeffrey Knox wrote an article for Inside the Eagles, I guess, .com. But I'm guessing these numbers are right. And Connor, thank you for bringing this up. But if you don't mind, I'm going to throw up this comment here from King Davis again, not to dwell on his comments that are erroneous. But you got tight ends running 4.4s. Really? I'd like to hear about them, Mark. You want me to read you the fastest tight ends at the combine this year? Will Mallory 4.54, Zach Kuntz 4.55, Sam Laporta 4.59, Luke Musgrave 4.61, Luke Schoonmaker 4.63. Give me a break. I don't know. Are we just saying things just to say things? Is that what? Oh, Kyle Pitts, Mark. Kyle Pitts. We bring up one guy. What Kyle Pitts? One guy.
And that's exactly. And that's the exact guy that I had in mind when I made the comment about quasi. Kyle Pitts never lined up in line as a tight end. He was basically a slot receiver. He was a tight end who split wide, didn't block. He was a wide receiver.
And Sam Laporta was the opposite. Sam Laporta was a tight end who Iowa had to run at wide receiver because they had no receivers. So, whatever. 4.59 is an excellent 40 time for Sam Laporta, and it's going to get him drafted. And the league is going to look at that and be really impressed because of his ability, his hands, his blocking ability, his attitude, the fact that he's from Iowa. All those things will help the cause. He's a good kid, very nice young man. He'll be just fine. He'll get drafted. I would say top 4 rounds would be my guess.
I always enjoy when the NFL Network, I didn't see it this year, but I saw it for 3 or 4 consecutive years, showed a list of the best wide receivers in the NFL currently and their 40 times. And you would be shocked how average they are. Like 4.55s, 4.57s.
And by the way, Noah Fant ran a 4.5 even. So, but again, Noah Fant he's a different breed. He was a different breed of tight end. Kind of like what you're talking about, kind of hybrid wide receiver in a way. So anyways, we can go off of that. But the point is, all of those Iowa players really tested out well at the combine. I'm excited. I haven't been this excited for the NFL draft in a while. Because I don't know what we've ever seen. Maybe I'm wrong on this. I don't know that we've ever seen 4 guys with a chance to get drafted inside the top 3 or 4 rounds. Maybe we have, and maybe I'm just completely, delirious,
Well, we've got plenty of time between now and the draft. We will throw up the board and look at each year and see if there are some comparisons there in future weeks. You will be pleased with me because I went to Twitter and I stuck up for Sam Laporta, who I saw on the NFL Network after his workout, State tight end U, and I said, absolutely. I can't argue with that in any such way.
And him getting drafted, and now with Eric All and Luke Lachey this next year, we're going to kind of just continue that. Something else I was going to bring up to you, and now I forgot what it was. I was going to bring up Colin Cowhead because remember we've talked about this too, but back in 2015 when he was on his little rant about Iowa being the fake idea of college football. So you remember, first of all, you know this. The guys like that, they're just doing stuff for shock effect, right? They just say things because they know it'll create clicks, and people like us will talk about it, right? But what's interesting about what Colin Cowherd said that year, that was after the loss to Michigan State and the loss to Christian McCaffrey in the Rose Bowl. And Iowa had 1 player drafted in the 6th round in that draft. And he used that, Colin Cowhead used that as ambition, or I should say ammunition, to support his narrative that Iowa was the fake idea of college football. Even though, Mark, that team consisted of Josie Jewell, Desmond King, George Kittle, CJ Beathard, Ike Betger. I mean, it's just incredible. So anyways, I always like to bring that up because using 1 draft to, support some claim like that, I guess for some people who don't pay attention, that's enough. But that was one of the more talented, probably the most talented roster. There's a reason they went 12-0. I know they won a lot of close games, and there were a lot of teams that weren't very good on that schedule.
Yeah,
that was probably the most. What's that?
The schedule wasn't the best.
The schedule was poor. I get that, but I'm just saying, if you look at what players have done in the league, that was probably the most loaded roster. We'll see. I mean, this one this past year was pretty darn loaded. I mean, we'll see what these guys get drafted this year do and beyond, but that was probably the most talented roster Kirk's had since at least 2010.
Yeah, 2017, you had 4 selections in the draft going in rounds 3, 4, 5, and 5. 2018, you had 3 more selections to the draft going in rounds 2, 2, and 4, including James Daniels and Josh Jackson. And then 2019 was a stellar draft, of course, with TJ and Noah Fant, and then 2 go in the 4th round.
And hair trigger, how about this? Parker Hesse is playing tight end in the league. Last I knew, he was playing with the Falcons, and actually playing with the Falcons, and he was a D end at Iowa. How about Matt Nelson? There's another good one. D tackle at Iowa, 6'8" dude, And last I knew, he was the starting right tackle for the Lions. Starting right offensive tackle for the Lions. So, yeah, really weird. And Anthony Nelson, here's another one that was on that. I believe he was on the 15. I think maybe he didn't.
He was drafted in 19, so he was on the team. Amani Hooker.
Anthony was drafted in 19.
Drafted in 19.
Okay, so maybe I'm a year or two behind, but
well, yeah. His last season would have been 18, so he would have been a freshman in 15.
Yeah, really talented roster. A lot of NFL players from that team.
Absolutely. Good stuff, folks. Appreciate you being here on Hawkeyes Live at the Voice of College Football. Again, gear up for Big Ten Tournament Week with Corey. Catch him at the from the Hawkeye of the Storm. And Corey, give us one more rundown on what the schedule looks like this week.
A lot of stuff. So I had Shelby Mast, bracketologist Shelby Mast, along with Tim Kruger on the show earlier today, actually earlier this afternoon. So catch that show. We talk Iowa, we talk Big Ten, we talk March Madness in general, and the brackets and the bracket selection process, etc. So check that show out. It'll be podcasted on our platforms here later today. And then tomorrow we'll have another episode of the podcast, Barta's Branded Thoughts. So we'll have another player interview, football player interview, recruit, who will be on the show. Won't give that away yet, but we'll have him on tomorrow. And I'll also preview the Big Ten tournament tomorrow. Then on, let's see, tomorrow's Wednesday, right? Thursday, we've got Iowa and the winner of Wisconsin, Ohio State for the men. So we'll have that post-game show, and we'll see. I mean, if Iowa can keep advancing, we'll have post-game shows every day through Sunday, and then we'll have a live bracket selection show after the official bracket selection show on CBS. We'll have my reaction, and we'll take calls on Sunday. And then I think the women's bracket is released that evening or the next day, and we'll have a live show then too. So it's a busy, busy time, Mark. But as you know, you experience this with football every year, although you just keep going. Once we get past this month, and once Iowa and the two Iowa teams bow out, there's no post-game coverage until, well, I usually do, I did post-game shows last year for Big Ten baseball once we hit the tournament. But besides that, it's pretty dead. I mean, we're going to stay here. There's going to be things going on, but I love doing post-game shows, and it's going to be a quiet period for a while. So I'll enjoy this month while it's here.
All right, very good stuff. We've got a Nebraska show coming up in a half hour, and keep in mind, you may know this already, Corey, the number one quarterback in the class of 2024, one Dylan Raiola, has Nebraska in his final three, and he was on campus 2 weekends ago. We talked about it, and it received a raving, welcome at the basketball game there for the Huskers. So that could really, not putting too much on one 5-star quarterback, but still the most important position, and a 5-star coming to Nebraska potentially. That's where the lean is that could really shake up and tilt what is the Big Ten Western Division currently, and who knows what it's going to be going forward.
On 3 has him going to USC.
Okay.
So we'll see. But I'll believe it when I see it. I know he's got the strong connections to Nebraska, but
legacy.
Yeah. But, doesn't always work out.
Of course, you go to USC and you get mentored by a coach who's coached 3 Heisman Trophy winners in the last 6 years.
And it's USC.
Yeah. So, all right, Corey. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
See everyone back here next Tuesday.